straight ahead on CCX News. Every year we tell thousands of stories. Today we share a few of our favorites with you.
I said she's a force to be reckoned with, and she is.
From people who have a heart to serve their neighbors to educators sharing the latest teaching methods in our schools.
It's really important to equip kids early on to have these conversations.
And the moments that made 2018 great.
Champlin Park champions in volleyball.
Here's a look at our favorite stories from your community as told here on CCX News. Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special year-end edition of CCX News. You'll see several familiar faces on this show and some not so familiar too, as we ask people behind the scenes to chime in on their favorite story. We begin the show with our Executive Director, Mike Johnson.
Hi, I'm Mike Johnson, Executive Director of Northwest Community Television and CCX Media. It's hard to pick one particular story. We do thousands of stories here every year, but I do like the fact that we are diving deep into these series. We have these special series now. We've done 7 of them in 2018, and taking more time to tell the full story, the full perspective. We've done stories about diversity in our communities and how the cities are handling that. The mental health crisis, what are cities doing to do that, and what resources are there for them. We've did an entire series on Crohn's and colitis, and that they call it like the silent illness, cops in the community, worker shortage, how are we dealing with that, and libraries of the future. Those are just some examples of some series that we've done. So again, from picking from thousands, I'm going to narrow it down to the specials that we're doing right now.
Now here's a look at one of those special series where we tried to shine a light on mental health. In The Silent Struggle, we examine not only how we can maintain our own mental health, but how schools, agencies, and cities are taking new approaches to treating mental illness. You can watch that entire show on our website. As a reporter, one of the most important messages I learned from this series is how important it is to share information for how people can get help. If you are concerned about someone or having thoughts of suicide yourself, call the number on your screen, 1-800-273-TALK, or text MN to 741-741. One of our memorable series this year involved one of our very own reporters, and it became a staff favorite story.
My name is Dustin Cooper. I'm a studio manager here at CCX Creates and also help out on the news. And my favorite story this year was Sonia's piece and 5-part series on Crohn's and colitis, because I got to know her a lot better and kind of understand the struggle she went through, and it helped humanize the people at work here.
2018 definitely did not start off well for me. January 1st, I was admitted to the hospital, and I had bleeding ulcers in my colon, and the doctors gave me only 2 choices. One, to either remove my entire colon, or they said we can try something called total parental nutrition, which basically meant that I would not be allowed to eat, and instead I would be fed through an IV bag and through my veins. And I had done this before, but this one was a little bit more drastic. I could only have coffee, broth, and suck on candies.
Hi everybody, my name is Sonia Goins.
So I made a little video while I was in the hospital.
Is inflammation
explaining, hey, I've got this IV bag and it's gonna keep me alive for the next 8 months or so. Not being able to eat, just like, it did a number on me mentally. Like, I still had to feed and cook for my kids, right? So I would fix breakfast for my son, and I would smell the oatmeal and stuff, and my mouth would water, and then at work people were eating all around me, and I couldn't eat, and it was really tough. It was to the point where I had to get professional help, and that's something I very rarely talk about, but to me, almost fighting mentally was more tougher than actually the physical aspect of dealing with Crohn's disease. I would have never been able to do this without my faith, you know. There were times when I didn't even think I was gonna make it, you know, but you know, I kept praying, and with the support of my friends and my family, you know, I got through this. I was kind of depressed. I mean, I didn't like the image I saw. You know, I had this, carrying this IV bag, and I had this catheter in my chest. By the way, I named my catheter Hopeful. Because after I got through this period, I thought, I'm alive, and I am hopeful. I'm hopeful that, you know, a cure will be found. Going forward, I decided that I was not going to let Crohn's take anything else away from me. So previous to getting sick in January, I had signed up for 2 half marathons. So I'm like, I'm gonna do this. Everybody thought I was crazy, even my family. And I decided to walk a half marathon in March. And this was only like 2 or 3 months after getting this IV treatment. And I did it, and it was one of the most proudest moments in my life. And recently, about a month or so ago, I finished the Savannah half marathon. I had to do a combination of run walk, but that particular race was dedicated to the pediatric support group through the Crohns Colitis Foundation here in Minnesota. These kids helped to motivate me, and that's what kind of got me through this. You know, I see all these kids around me that are suffering through these same digestive diseases, and I'm like, well, heck, if they can do it, I can do it, you know? Plus, you know, I want to be strong for my family too. I want my kids to know that just because bad things happen in your life, you don't have to give up. So if there's a message out there, that's the one I want to give out. Is like, just because things get hard, don't give up.
It might come as no surprise then that Sonia's favorite story also involved a woman overcoming incredible odds.
My name is Sonia Goins. I'm a reporter here at CCX News, and my favorite story is of 90-year-old Ava Gross from Plymouth. She's a Holocaust survivor, and she talked about how her family survived Nazi Germany and were taken from their home in Hungary. And despite all her hardships, she was still, you know, positive. And her lasting quote to me was, "If we could just get rid of hate, what a wonderful world we could all live in." So that's my favorite story.
Thank you, Sonia. Still ahead on CCX News, we are often in schools for our favorite stories, so we'll go to school coming up next. There are dozens of schools in our area, and if you are a regular viewer, you know that we are often in schools, bringing you stories about what students are learning and how they are growing. So it's no doubt that some of our school coverage makes the list as some of our favorite stories of the year.
My name is Dave Kaiser, the Assistant Executive Director at CCX Media, and my favorite stories of the year were the school spotlights, which took viewers inside area schools they drive by every day, but may not know what happens inside. One particular story that stood out was done in April on Plymouth Creek Elementary, where they talked about diversity programs and also getting young learners off to a great start.
Today we're putting our ideas on paper and we're just trying things out.
The time a person spends as a student can last more than a dozen years.
Oh, a sparrow.
And for many, their academic journey begins in kindergarten.
There's something special about 5-year-olds. Everything is magical. Everything is exciting. Everything I tell them, they eat up.
Ashley Paul is one of the teachers in charge of molding these young minds at Plymouth Creek Elementary. And if you spend a few minutes in her class, it doesn't take long to notice that there's no shortage of enthusiasm. Mrs. Paul calls Plymouth Creek a unique place.
Our school has so many different cultures, so many different languages. You'll notice in the hallways all of these flags are representative of our student body and where families are coming to us from. We all have a heritage.
Plymouth Creek not only embraces its diversity,
yes, this is true.
Teachers use it as a teaching tool.
Purple or blue.
Every spring, Mrs. Paul teaches her class a unit on heritage, culture, and race. To get that message across, she uses a series of books with titles such as "I'm Not From Here" and "Separate is Never Equal."
There's lots of studies that show that kids as early as 3 and 4 are starting to notice differences in other people and also make opinions that stick with them long term. And so the earlier we can talk about some of these things, the better off, hopefully, our students are later on in life? What heritage do you have?
It's a topic that's not just relegated to kindergarten. Each of the grade levels uses the same collection of books to have conversations on diversity.
I think helps to prepare kids for the world once they leave school. You know, the climate now especially. I just think it's really important to equip kids early on to have these conversations. We are the same.
Yet while that is certainly an important topic, make no mistake that Plymouth Creek is a normal elementary school filled with more than 700 gym class-loving students.
I have the best job in the world.
Craig Hawkinson is Plymouth Creek's physical education teacher.
I can take this lesson.
And for a school focused on diversity,
this is an example of our first warm-up game.
He uses a diverse method to teach kids new games.
I take a lesson, I put it into Google Slides. We have a warm-up in there, we have a pre-game, we have a real game, sometimes 2 real games, and we just switch the slides and the kids are learning based off of the slide.
During this game of kickball, which is a version that involves 6 different balls, videos showing how to play the game are projected onto the wall. That way, students can take a glance at the videos during class if they need a refresher course on the rules.
It also really helps the students that struggle with English as their primary language. They're able to see a visual of the game happening, which sometimes is a lot easier than understanding me or Miss Martin describing the game.
Whether it's understanding a game,
tell me why,
or comprehending the world at large, the teachers at Plymouth Creek say that when students graduate, they come away with more than the basics of education.
You learn a lot of skills, and you're going to need this when you grow up kind of information, but I also hope that they felt like they left a place where they belonged and they felt safe.
Hello everyone, my name is Meredith Hagler and I'm a reporter here at CCX News. One of my favorite stories from 2018 was also an education story. My favorite story was where I went to a worker expo. Skilled workers that are in a union taught children about their jobs. Lots of stories that I've covered here have been about how Minnesota has a skilled labor worker shortage, and these union workers took it upon themselves to teach kids about their jobs in hopes that in the future those kids will go into their fields.
Still to come on CCX News, a woman in New Hope who has a heart for giving and a talent for mobilizing volunteers. But first, our favorite sports stories of the year.
I'm John Jacobson, sports director here at CCX. Every year we have a lot of great moments, great games, and exciting finishes that we cover. My favorite story for 2018 was Champlin Park's volleyball state championship team. This is a program that made the state tournament for a 5th straight season this fall. And the core of this team, Izzy Ashburn, Emma Schmidt, and Caitlin Weimerskirch, played varsity volleyball together at Champlin Park since 9th grade. And they were joined this year by Lauren Clark, who transferred over from Armstrong. It was a tremendous collection of talent, 4 Division I seniors, 2 of whom will play in the Big Ten next year, arguably the nation's top conference for volleyball. With a strong supporting cast, this team blew through the competition throughout the season and swept a strong up-and-coming Wayzata team in the Section 5 3A final. And that's it for the 5th year in a row. The Champlin Park Rebels are the Section 5 3A volleyball champions. Then it was on to the state tournament, where the Rebels defeated Moorhead, Lakeville South, and then Egan in an exciting 5-set match. Or into the net, the first time ever, Champlin Park champions in volleyball. The title was not only a first for Champlin Park volleyball, but for the school as well. After 6 runner-up team finishes in various sports, this group of Rebels brought home the school's first ever state championship. That is my favorite story for 2018. Now here's another from the world of CCX sports.
Hi, I'm Trudi, and I am a receptionist here at CCX Media. And my favorite stories that we cover are when we do adapted sports, because I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't get to see, and there's not a lot of television coverage, and I'm glad that we get to do it here.
Thanks, Trudi. We'll be back in just a moment with more of our favorite stories.
And finally, flowers from the heart. We are joined now by DAlene Cleveland.
I'm DAlene Cleveland, one of the reporters here, and I heard about a New Hope woman who every May gets a bunch of people together in her garage, and what they do is they put together bouquets for the annual Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure event. So not only does she take the time out of her day to do this every year, but she gets dozens of people to help out. So I just thought that was my favorite story of 2018.
And these people just step up every year and help me out.
Every year for the past 17 years,
I've kind of built a monster out of this. It's gotten really big.
an assembly line forms in Joe Fashman's New Hope garage.
Tying bundles of flowers.
Throughout the course of the day, 80 people will arrange, chop, and bundle several thousand floral bouquets.
A few of these people had their arms twisted the first year, but they all come back willingly. Every other year they come back willingly.
They come back because, well, you just can't say no to Joe.
This one can handle the monster.
I have been constantly amazed by Jo and everything that she does. I said she's a force to be reckoned with, and she is. She accomplishes things that I don't think anybody would even try to start.
Jo happens to be an expert in flowers. She's a former florist with a number of connections. When it comes time to plan for this event, she calls in a few favors.
I'm really good at begging.
She's so good that every single one of these flowers came free of charge.
I never request anything. Whatever is an overreach or what they think would work for us.
The floral arrangements are bound for the Survivor tent at Sunday's Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure at Southdale. Decorating that tent every year has become a passion project for Jo.
But setting up that tent to celebrate all the survivors that sign up and come down to the race and bond. And this makes them happy.
Making people happy is part of the reason why Jo does this year after year. She's a breast cancer survivor herself, and she knows how much this means to people.
I do it for others. I enjoy doing it for me because I know how much the people appreciate it. So we're going to do it for as long as we can.
As long as Jo gets the donations and people are willing to help, this well-oiled machine will keep on churning year after year.
This is just a little symbol of there's always hope, there's always life.
And we are back in just a moment with more favorite stories, this time from the Connection crew.
Hi, I'm Chris O'Connor.
And I'm Beth Anderson. We shoot and edit stories for The Connection. One of our favorite stories we did this year was one we worked on together. It was about fire prevention tips from the West Metro Fire Rescue District.
It was a fun piece for us to work on, and we think the story is entertaining.
This is Shelby, the friendly firefighter. She's helping her friend Ron get ready for a party.
Shelby, what's going on? You ready to party?
I am ready to party, Ron. Look at this, I got the ingredients.
Come on in.
All right.
It doesn't take long for Shelby to notice Ron has more than a few fire safety issues at his house.
Oh my goodness. Really? What were you thinking?
Clearly I wasn't thinking, I'm sorry.
This is a serious problem. That is just wrong. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Shelby is exasperated by Ron's lack of knowledge of fire safety.
Ron, you have a lot of fire hazards in your home. Let's first start out with the kitchen. Unattended cooking, do you know that that's the leading cause of fires in homes?
Shelby, I literally just stepped out of the room for a minute to go to the door.
Never leave something on the stove unattended when you leave the room. Be especially careful when cooking with oil. If it gets too hot, it can catch on fire on its own. If it does catch on fire, do not use water. Just turn off the burner and carefully cover it with a lid to smother it. Also, it is recommended to keep a fire extinguisher in your kitchen. Hey Ron, what do you got cooking in this crock pot? Oh, it smells good.
Oh, it's one of Susie's favorite recipes.
But you don't want to overload an outlet, and you definitely don't want to connect multiple power strips and extension cords together. Oh, by the way, Ron, make sure that you use the right wattage for bulbs in lamps or any light fixtures that you have. And Ron, never use an extension cord with a space heater. Make sure to leave 3 feet of space around your space heater. That means keeping away from the furniture, blankets, and even the walls. Never leave a space heater on overnight. A safe space heater is one that is listed, hasn't been recalled, and has an auto shut-off feature. Hey Ron, you know, you gotta be safer with those cigarettes.
I know, I'm sorry. It's a terrible habit.
Always use a non-combustible ashtray and make sure the ashes are completely out before disposing of them. The core of a cigarette can reach up to 1,000 degrees.
Wow, that's hot.
And it can smolder for up to 8 hours after you put it out. Either leave cigarette butts sit until they are completely burned out or soak them in water. And Ron, definitely do not smoke in bed. Most importantly, make sure their smoker alarms are working all the time. That means have good batteries in them, and test them every month. The batteries need to be changed twice a year.
How many of these smoke alarms do I need in my house?
There should be one on every floor, one in each bedroom, and one in the hallway that leads to your bedrooms. You know, smoke alarms don't last forever, so you should replace them every 10 years. One idea is to use a smoke detector that has a 10-year lithium battery built in. You wouldn't have to replace the batteries, but you should still test the smoke detectors every month. Smoke alarms save lives. A fire doubles in size about every 15 seconds. The more warning you have, the better chance you have to get you and your family out of the house safely.
After Shelby's help, Ron wants to learn more about fire safety.
Thanks, Shelby. I had no idea I had so many fire hazards in my house. Where can I find out more information?
I'm glad you asked. You can look on the web at wmfrd.org or contact your local fire department.
Our next story is about a new dock in a New Hope park, and all I can say is anytime I get to go for a canoe ride with a dog, it's going to be one of my favorites.
You can now easily launch your canoe or kayak on Northwood Lake in New Hope. A new dock is making it possible, and that project came about when residents from the Northwood Lake Association partnered with the city.
We wouldn't have ever installed it if it was just the Public Works project. The Northwood Lake Association came and offered to partner 50-50 on the cost of it in order to get the dock installed. So they were able to help us fund the project, and then each year we'll install and take the dock out and store it over the winter.
This new dock adds to the amenities at Northwood Park and is a great improvement to what was there before.
It would often be muddy, and there was not much incentive for people to drag their canoes or kayaks up there, and there wasn't really a place that was designated for that. So this has made a world of difference, and everybody that has used it or seen it loves it.
And no list of favorite stories would be complete without a pickleball story. It was a great day to get outside and meet some awesome pickleball players who play on some new courts in Brooklyn Park.
With 6 new dedicated pickleball courts, Norwood Park is the hot spot for pickleball in Brooklyn Park.
The explosion of pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. Has really required us to take a look at how can we better serve this segment of our population and give them a place to play.
And of course, the courts are open to players of all levels.
We have a kind of a beginner, intermediate group, and then we have more experienced or advanced group. The whole idea of pickleball is a very social event, some competitive spirit as well, but really being as inclusive as possible.
These courts came about from the city listening to what park users want and residents doing some homework, proposing Norwood Park is an ideal spot for pickleball.
For one thing, the tree line. We've got a lot of trees here, so it provides a lot of shelter from the wind. Pickleballs are easier, more subjective to wind blasts than tennis balls are. So that was a main thing. The off-street parking, there are over 50 parking spaces right next to us here. So that makes a big difference too.
They brought that to the table. The city worked through the funding mechanisms, the approval, and then ultimately the construction of it. And last fall we opened up this fantastic facility.
Thank you, Chris and Beth, and thanks for joining us, everyone. We look forward to 2019 and covering more stories in your community. Now, if you have a story idea for us, please let us know. If you know of a story in your school, in your neighborhood, in your church or place of worship, please let us know by calling the number on your screen. Sometimes the best stories go untold because we simply don't know about them. So please reach out and give us a call. We would love to hear from you. Again, thanks for joining us, everyone, and thanks for listening to our favorite stories. Have a safe and happy new year from all of us here at CCX Media.